Hello all, I hope you're doing well today. As I've said in recent videos, I'm getting on a bit. I'm nearing 40, and at this point I can look over my life, and while I'm getting older physically, you do feel you're coming alive spiritually if you're growing in new ways. In fact, really up to my late 20s I was spiritually dead, so while young, I didn't feel that vitality inside. Now as I approach 40, I've been lucky or unlucky enough, depending on how you see it, to experience true spiritual decay and true spiritual life. And one thing that I'd like to say in this video is that most people, not all, but most people are going to be afflicted by the subtle danger of festering. Many of us need a rocket, something beneath us to make us wake up and realize the danger we're in, to make us realize the majesty of life. This is why, people who have near-death experiences come back and they treasure life and they really see how amazing it is to be able to see things around you, to hear things, to touch things, to breathe. Each one of these things is a miracle, a total gift that we're completely blind to normally. I've also experienced in my own life as I came into my late 20s, the big disaster. As I've said before, lost a family member, my brother died, lost in drugs very young, never got out. Saw friends die as well. Myself, I started to get lost in worldly things, women, booze, the promise of status, all the things that I thought I could be. But ultimately when I got there, I realised that it was just a castle of sand. Now I had a bit of a dramatic, I guess you could say, breakthrough in my late 20s, which really came at a perfect time for me, because it allowed me to enter adult life, that's the 30s, in a new frame. And in many ways, this is why in the spiritual life, you'll hear many people say, I wish I had the big disaster, because the big disaster wakes you up. And it's really hard to, while people can hear the wisdom, it's hard for them to really understand the spiritual path without that great shock, without that great existential crisis. And it's a strange thing to wish for. I think there was a story of an old nun, actually, who used to pray for adversity because with adversity she'd stay close to God. And I think there's a lot of spiritual wisdom in that. But I don't believe we should have to pray for disaster or bad things. If they come to you, they come to you. If they don't, they don't. We have to deal with the hand we're dealt. And I can honestly say, having been through a really bad thing myself, these things go both ways. They can kill you. And they've killed my brother. They've killed friends of mine. So they go both ways. And you don't want to be too careful with these things. They can pull the floor away from you and mash your head in if you're not careful. Now, I was lucky enough to be guided by the right people. Something awakened inside of me. And I realized everything I thought was wrong. I was living on a very sort of, I guess you could say three-dimensional plane. But really, it's more one-dimensional. I woke up to a reality bigger than myself. And that improved my life immeasurably. Now, of course, there's externals there. I don't think I would have been able to get married, attract the right woman, find the right role in life if I hadn't gone through that. But I'm wary of this sort of, adopt the spiritual life. You'll have this amazing life of Ferraris and cars and a dream wife. That's not really what the spiritual life is about. Very often, these things, not necessarily Ferraris, but life will improve externally because your spiritual state does. That's most of the time we'll find that. But we shouldn't step into the spiritual life for finite, worldly trinkets. If we're doing it for that reason, I think we've taken a wrong turn and the ego is back in control. The real spiritual life talks of the timeless, something beyond that which we can understand. It opens up the door to something far more beautiful and great than we could have possibly fathomed. And that gives us an ability to deal with the hardships of life that, again, we never thought we would have been able to prior. But anyway, as my life started to improve, I also noticed that the intensity, the spiritual vitality started to lessen a little bit. Now, it's never gone away. It's always been there. I've always been able to pick up scripture or listen to a wise master and be like, yeah, that's it. That is really talking to the truth. I've been able to feel it inside of myself most of the time. But I have also got back to what you might call a normal life. I was not normal for most of my life. I was struggling and striving to make sense of things. And as I've always said, when you're in hell, okay is heaven. You realize, okay, neutrality is just total peace. And you're like, I can't believe I've ignored this. But the thing is, when you're out of that hell, that okay, that neutrality just becomes the new normal. And the ego can creep back in, or expectation can creep back in. And that's where I think I've started to experience a bit more of the generic spiritual challenge, which is that idea that festering in what we are can be really deadly. The dark forces want you festering. They want you just doing your 9 to 5, not really thinking too much about the state of your soul, engaging in what you engage in. We all have our vices, whatever they are for you. And slowly, you just get corrupted without really seeing it happen. Of course, the metaphor for this is how long does it take to boil a frog before it notices? Of course, the frog doesn't notice in the famous metaphor. You put the frog in cold water. By the time it's hot, it hasn't realised because it's step-by-step change. I think the nicer way, more poetic way to put this is by the great C.S. Lewis. I think this is a quote. Indeed, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. And I think this is so true, and I think this is what so many of us are really doing battle with. It's when it's like, yeah, chill out, have that beer, watch another episode of whatever thing you're watching on Netflix or another YouTube video, which just isn't helping you. Now, I don't want to demean your space to relax. That's not what I'm having a go at. We all need that space to relax. In fact, me personally, I find I'm the sort of person who needs challenge, relaxation. Too much relaxation, I get swallowed in the quicksand. Too much challenge, I get burnt out. I have a very highly sensitive nervous system, so I have to be very conscious of that. Now, these things are always a gift when you understand them, but it's hard to get that measure right. Human beings struggle with that in my experience. But the point I'm making here is we have a choice in our spiritual life as men, especially in an age which wants us to be mundane. And when I say mundane, I'm not necessarily saying that you have to go out and be Andrew Tate. If you're in that phase of life and you want to follow someone like Tate, fine. That could be good for us, I think, at one level of our development. Because it might aid you in bettering yourself in a worldly way. Taking on challenges. I don't think it's really going to help you in the long-term spiritual life, but it might get you to a platform where you realize, okay, that worldly stuff isn't quite what it says on the tin. I'm yearning something a bit deeper. But ultimately, we need, as a matter of course, to push ourselves to the edge. And if we're willing to be honest with ourselves, the edge is always there for us somewhere. It might be that thing that you're putting off. It might be that challenge that you're unwilling to accept. It might be that thing that you're not willing to sacrifice in your life yet. Could be a woman, could be a behaviour, could be a job. But it's something that deep down, I need to let go of this. And until you really do, you're never going to be free. It's a lovely saying by Christ in the Gospels where, I'm not going to get this verbatim, but he says something like, it's better for a part of your body to be cast into hell than the whole of your body. And it's such a beautiful phrase and image for us to think about when we're speaking about these matters. It's better for you to sacrifice a bit of your life that's holding you back rather than it eat the whole of you in 20 to 30 years. And we've got to be really clear, what is that thing? And the aim here, as I say, look, maybe you will be called to earn £1 million and be a big star and all the ladies like you. Maybe that will be your path. If it is, great, good for you. It's not mine. I don't care. Because what I want is peace with God. I want to know I'm aligned. If that means being president of the world, fine. But I don't think it does. And I'm happy it doesn't, because I'm not interested in that so much. What I want is to be aligned with God. And he might want you to be a street sweeper. He might want you to be president of the USA. I don't know. But when you're aligned with that truth, and you'll know when you are because you'll feel peace and certainty and vitality, then you're living your way. And it's not about externals, it's about internals, and the external will follow. And no matter the worldly treasures or lack thereof, you won't mind. You will just be as you are because you'll be in your true self. And we only get there by being on the edge. The real purpose of life is spiritual growth. That's what creates the best men of tomorrow. They act like lights for the community, for the society, for the family, but especially for other men. And boy, do we need that right now. We are so sorely lost as a generation. To be fair, there are many people who are out there, especially in the online world, but it's hard to find them. And especially with the troubles coming, I think we need these men who are spiritually rooted on the path, who can see beyond the dangers and drama of the immediate to the bigger picture. And we need to be very, very wary about where we could be being pulled in, pulled down into destruction. Like I say, that destruction that pulls you in right away, whacks you around the face, you know you're in a fight. And most men, when they're in a fight, will fight back. And that can make you. But for most of us, the real fight is subtle. And you've got to be up every single day at it. This is why I've been speaking about it on the Substack, this daily practice. Go and join the Substack. At least practice it. Find your own methodology. I'm going to release some courses soon that hopefully you can do that can aid you in this. But of course, the real stuff is going to be the 7-step path, the Brotherhood initiation. Free call this Saturday. Do come along if you fancy learning more. If you listen to this video after this Saturday, don't worry, there'll be more opportunities down the line. Just join the Substack. You'll have the information as and when. I'll try and do them every few months. You can reach out to me and so on and other guys in the community. But it's so important we're awake, because if we're not awake, we will get pulled down into hell. The evil forces of this world want you to be bovine. If your soul is awake, your mind is awake, you can live a life beyond your wildest dreams. And that's not anything that anybody can give to you. Not me, not the most biggest millionaire in the world, not the greatest spiritual teacher. It's inside you and your spiritual journey. That's what real life is. Peace, brothers. Hope to see you on the Substack. Hope to see you on the call soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.